I've never gotten a perfect on that.
Perfect score?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, people get perfect scores on these tests. Well, I don't know. They never tell us what the person's actual score is other than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you just know statistically that there are people out there that get perfect scores.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't you get an email like who gets what on it? Or
Yeah, I get a breakdown. As a matter of fact, I also get, during that 10-minute planning period where you're sketching out, thinking about your answers, I get those booklets. So if you want to write, "Hi, Mr. Gideon," that's fine, because I usually flip through them.
Oh God.
But don't do anything obscene. Once in a while I find something in there, it's like, that's disturbing. So,
What would they do?
I don't even want to say.
Don't explain.
Do you have a list of answers to this? Just like a list?
Yes. We'll go through them right now.
Can we go over number 53?
You want to take requests for the DJ?
Yeah.
Well, who does?
Or do you want to just go one at a time?
Yeah, let's go one.
I think it's better to go one at a time, because then you guys can discuss a little bit what you think the answer is and why.
Right.
And then when you finally hear the answer, it sticks a little bit more. Now, the first half of this exam was harder than the second half.
Really? Another.
Yeah.
Really? Really?
I mean, just that's my personal opinion.
When we took it, I think everyone just got tired. Because by the last 5 questions, I was just like, D.
Yeah. In their class, Miklos, they actually took the exam in class.
Yeah, no, that's what I heard.
So,
yeah, no, that's not
so let's go through these.
I like taking that. That was probably a good experience.
Yeah, I like
Taking it.
What I did in class last week also was I timed each one of the questions and put an alarm for 1 minute, just so that you could kind of feel what a minute feels like, because you're supposed to be pacing yourself at 1:10 each. Some don't take nearly a minute, some take longer than a minute, and it's almost impossible not to take more than a minute unless you've seen these actual questions before. Would that help you or no?
What, timing it?
Yeah.
I think I finish on time.
Speaking of you, extended time,
Yeah.
I looked at the list today and they didn't have anything listed in the counseling office for extended time for May 12th.
Really?
So you better make sure that
Okay.
they're expecting to give you extended time. As a matter of fact, I have the sheet right here
You do?
and it doesn't say anything on there, so take a peek.
Okay, well, wow.
All right,
Talk to my colleague.
so question 1. I'm not going to time these because we'll just go faster. Otherwise, we'll have to wait for the time if it's easy, and time is too precious. So number 1, in a mixed economy, yes.
D?
Do you think D?
Yeah.
Does everybody think D?
Yeah.
That is correct. Number 1 was D. 85% of the country got that correct. Number 2. Remember, there's a difference between real and nominal, not just GDP, but income, interest rates. And you think you know what the answer is? Flash it with your fingers. A, B, C, D, or E. So I see a lot of 3s up, which means you guys think the answer is C. Jason, you agree? Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Think the answer is C for 2?
I wasn't sure.
No, 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 no.
Yeah, I'll go with C then.
And that is correct. The answer is C.
Yes.
72% correct on that. Remember something now. You can calculate very simply what the real anything is, particularly interest rates or GDP, by doing real, which equals nominal minus inflation. Isn't that what real is? It's taking out a number, or having a number minus inflation. Because otherwise, the number's not really accurate if it includes inflation. So real equals nominal, just the number, minus inflation. All right, number 3. This is just a matter of memorization, right? Knowing the different kinds of unemployment, structural unemployment, frictional unemployment.
Oh, I remember your example.
Yeah, I know.
Frictional, the example was, Mr. Gideon hates his job at Notre Dame. There's a lot of friction. He decides that he wants to go someplace better, trades up for Chaminade. For that short period of time that he's unemployed, where he's moving from one job to the other over the summer, that would be an example of frictional unemployment. But that's not what this is asking you. What do we think the answer is? E is correct. That was 67% correct. So
What-
1/3 of the country missed that question.
Aren't there three types, structural, frictional, or is it only two?
No, isn't there one more?
Structural,
Frictional.
frictional, cyclical,
Oh.
as a result of the business cycle.
And
Like, my AD prep book says seasonal is one, but the book.
Seasonal is another type.
Okay.
For instance, let's say that you are in the habit of working at a Christmas tree lot over the winter break. When you finally finish that job, because it's only going to be good for a couple of weeks, you're not selling Christmas trees in April, then you become seasonally unemployed. Same thing with a summer job, because the season changes.
isn't there one where you, that's structural, where like, let's say new technology is built and so they don't need, okay, so those are the three?
All right, let's do number 4. Remember, there's a difference between a regular old market, which is a micro concept, and aggregate supply and aggregate demand, looking at the entire economy. This is just a plain old market, a market for pairs. Anybody not think it's D? It's definitely D, right? Because if there's substitutes and there's bad news about the substitute or the competition for that product, then people are going to run to its substitute and they're going to demand more of that, right? So there's bad news about apples, more people start buying pears. Yes?
I thought it was D, but can you remind me why I'm inclined not to choose A? Because I don't know, I saw it, but I for some reason my gut told me not A.
Unless, well, one of the things you want to know is, or what are the factors that can shift a regular old market demand and market supply curve? Those are in your book and your notes.
Yeah.
Same thing with AD and SARAS. There are charts in your book that list the factors that can shift it. They're also in the notes, in the PDF file that I saved to Blackboard. All right. There are no factors listed that would say, well, you know, bad news, because that's essentially what this factor is all about. Bad news would shift a supply curve.
Okay.
Now, if they had said something like, well, you know, the technology used to produce this crop took a step back, which you could kind of say is what's happening with the use of pesticides, and that could affect supply, but that's a stretch on this one. They're not trying to trick you. They're trying to test you. But they're not trying to trick you. Yeah, Jason?
Are substitutes just competitors?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
All right, so 4 was D and 80% correct on that. Number 5. Remember to study your synonyms. If you have a thesaurus built into your notes from the class, study that, because I can't tell you what word they're going to use. They might say spending, they might say expenditures, they might say outlays. It's all the same thing. A couple of votes for C, another vote for C. Yes, the answer is C, and that was 91% correct. That's pretty easy. If you know the definition of a deficit, you should get it right. It's a slam dunk. All right, number 6. I think this question had the highest score on the test. 96% of the country got it right. A couple of these are pretty much common sense.
Mr. Gideon actually just opened up a stock trading account.
You did?
Yeah.
What, Scott Trade?
Yeah. It's the cheapest one ever.
You right?
You buy or sell anything yet?
I bought ARM Holdings, which is the company that makes the computer chips for Apple.
Oh,
Say they just bought.
Interesting.
Yeah, we should do that.
All right, the answer for 6 is B.
Yeah.
Were you signaling me E?
Yeah, it was a joke.
Okay.
Sure.
Number 7.
Massatron.
This is just another vocab question. Knowing what crowding out is. Remember, there's direct and indirect crowding out. There's complete and incomplete crowding out. Zero crowding out. So what do you think? Give me a guess.
I'm gonna be wrong. I know it. Yeah.
Jason?
In my mind.
The answer is B.
Oh, I was gonna say C.
Wow. Can you explain? Is this
That's the whole definition of crowding out. Crowding out is the government increasing spending, and that spending pushing out the normal spending that people would do privately. Okay, maybe they normally spend $100 billion on shoes. The government says, to try to stimulate the economy, we're going to buy $100 billion worth of shoes and give them to people. And that's going to help the economy. Well, not really. Not if they were already planning on buying them for themselves. Unless they're going to double dip and say, now I can have twice as many shoes. But chances are there's going to be some crowding out. They're going to crowd out or push out some of the private spending that already existed. Correct? Now, remember, there is a difference between the types of crowding out and the amount of crowding out. Remember this? First, the amount. The amount could be 0 or no crowding out. You could have some crowding out, which is incomplete crowding out. That's some. Or there's complete crowding out. That's how much. Then you can have how it happens, the method that causes it. You could have direct and indirect. Right? So let's say the amount. This is an example of potential amounts of crowding out. Let's say the economy's in a recession. So there's aggregate demand, there's short-run aggregate supply, long-run aggregate supply.
That's recession again, right?
This is a recession, right? And the government says, let's do something about that because we want the economy to get to its natural spot, the natural amount of output, or real GDP, the natural amount of income. What else goes here? The natural amount of, that's right, full employment,
And
or the natural amount of unemployment. These are all things you would put in your legend. Don't handwrite these things long-term in your graphs when you're doing the FRQs. Your graph's going to get too crowded. It's going to be very difficult to read. Abbreviate, and then just use a legend, okay? So the economy is in a recession. The government says we're going to do something to try to help remedy that situation. And they say we're going to spend, there's one under there, all right. Increase spending by $100 billion, okay? If this doesn't move at all, then what kind of crowding out is that, in terms of the amount?
No crowding.
That's complete crowding out.
Yeah.
That's complete crowding out. Maybe they increased government spending by $100 billion, but that decreased private spending. This is government spending. Private spending by $100 billion because it crowded out private spending. Okay, that's how that would look. It doesn't budge. Now, if private spending decreases by $50 billion, it moves a little bit, right? It moves $50 billion worth. What kind of crowding out is that?
Incomplete crowding out.
That's incomplete. If there's no crowding out, good news, we didn't have any of that bad stuff. And let's say AD goes to there.
so it goes back to equilibrium if there's no crowding out.
Correct. That's no crowding out, zero crowding out. Now, if you have this or this, there could be two different methods that cause it, correct? One is direct, the other one's indirect. Direct is just what we're talking about right now. The government spends a certain amount, and because of that, people say, I won't spend my own money. Very direct, right to the point. What about indirect crowding out? It's got a few more steps. By definition, it's indirect. What happens is the government engages in deficit spending. Deficit spending. In other words, they are spending more than they're bringing in tax revenues. Now, how do you do that? How do you spend more than you're bringing in? You borrow. It doesn't just apply for the government, it applies for people like us, right? There are people out there walking around in debt. That's where debt comes from. It comes from deficit spending. Whether you're talking about the federal government, you're talking about individuals. They have to borrow it. Now, maybe they borrow from their rich uncle Jimmy, or maybe they borrow from a bank by asking for a loan or charging their credit cards. That's a very common way of engaging in deficit spending, right? The federal government doesn't have a credit card. They do what? They issue bonds, right? But the point about this question is going into the loanable funds market and increasing the demand for loans, right? So if you have a loanable funds market, right, it looks like this. Ooh, a little sloppy. Real interest rates, supply of loanable funds, demand for loanable funds. Here's the quantity of loanable funds. And since I'm working on this, money market looks like this, right? Supply of money, demand for money. There's the quantity of money. Here's little I because it's just nominal interest rate. Quantity of money. But anyway, what happens with indirect crowding out? The government says, we need to borrow money. So which curve are they going to affect? The demand or the supply curve for loanable funds? Are they going to be supplying more or less?
Supply more.
They are going to be supplying more, perhaps. But that's
Demand would go up.
the piece you want to focus on is the demand for loanable funds.
Is this only on indirect?
Yep, only on indirect. So they're going to increase the demand for loanable funds, which does what to real interest rates?
Increases.
Increases them. Or maybe they go in the money market for something short term. Usually for a problem like this, deficit spending is usually more long term. But you could have the same thing happen in that market. You know, they could increase the demand for money maybe. They go into the short term, right? Because this is less than a year. This is greater than a year. And if they did that over here, that would increase interest rates. Demand for money increases, and so does the nominal interest rate. But what happens if they increase interest rates through deficit spending, or they're borrowing? What they're doing is they're making it more expensive for people to take loans out. If they're making it more expensive for people to take loans out, then some people say, gosh, it's too expensive for me. They're going to fall out of that market, and they're not going to be able to buy as much. And so that's how these happen. You know, it makes consumption and investment, buying by households and businesses, decrease. Because loans just got more expensive for these people, and some of the people that wanted to take loans can't afford them now. That's what indirect crowding out is. Questions about that?
One of the words, like in D, uses capital outflow and then capital inflow. Can you sort of give me synonyms or maybe like a little definition?
Well, think of capital as financial capital. Remember that there's
Physical and financial.
physical and financial capital, right? And that capital is one of the 4 factors of production.
Yeah.
Financial capital flows not just within a country, but between countries.
Okay.
So if you're somebody that's looking for an investment, we're not talking about big I, which is businesses buying more equipment, more land, more factories perhaps. You're talking about investment in the way that we normally think of it, like Dylan's new stock trading account, right? He's looking to grow his money. Well, if you're looking possibly at other countries, then, and you're willing to send your money outside of your country to another place to have it grow, that would be a capital outflow. Your financial capital is flowing out of the country to some other place in the hopes that it's going to grow. If somebody's doing that to you, right? Somebody, a foreigner, is sending money to your country, and this is happening a lot in Ethiopia, because talked to Tessa about this, and there's news out there about how there's a lot of capital inflow to Ethiopia. That's the flip side of that. Okay? All right. Let's do some more questions. Let's go to, are we on 8 now?
Yeah, no, right.
Let's do 8. It's really another vocab question. 87% got this right. Now, A is the correct answer. If you knew it was right as soon as you read it, you still need to be disciplined during the test and force yourself to go through the other answers, because sometimes more than one answer is correct, or it's at least reasonable. You need to pick the best answer from all those that are given. So discipline yourself. You want to be quick, but you don't want to hurry. That's what Coach Wooden would say from UCLA, right? The greatest basketball coach ever said, be quick, but don't hurry. Yes?
I understand like the reserve banking system, but is there different types of that?
Reserve banking, fractional reserve, fractional, it's all the same thing. You're supposed to take a fraction of the deposits and set them aside, right? It's just a synonym for that. Now we understand, speaking of banking, we understand what the percentage, where the percentage is applied, right? Hopefully you don't forget this. If we say the reserve requirement is 10%, it's 10% of what? That's right. Or demand deposits. That's another synonym. So you have the bank of this, assets and liabilities, and there's this. Now let's say the reserve requirement is 10%. But this is checkable deposits, and in this bank they have, $4,000 of reserves. They have $6,000 in bonds. And they want to make some loans. They haven't made loans yet, they're a new bank. Well, how much can they loan out and not break the law? It's 10% of this 10,000, not 10% of the 4,000. It's 10% of 10,000. So 10% of 10,000 is 1,000. So they can loan out 1,000. And if they don't want to cash in any of these bonds, oh, man, I need some pens.
Wait, they're going to loan out 1,000 or they're going to loan out 9,000?
What's that?
They're going to loan out 9,000.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. What they can set aside is, they have to set aside 1,000. They can loan out how much though? 9,000 if they want, but if they're not going to liquidate any of these bonds, they said, no, we're not touching the bonds. Then what can they loan out in this scenario? 3,000. You're only going to touch 3,000, right? They're going to take this and break it up into $1,000 of required reserves and $3,000 of excess reserves and loan against that. Now, if they're cool with selling these bonds off and turning them into cash, then fine. They can make $9,000 worth of loans. The law will permit that. Just depends on the bank.
Has it gone up from 10% since first semester? Isn't it like a
It's a little more complicated than the way we explain it. This is a bit of an oversimplification, but yeah, the reserve requirement is closer to 13% actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was on my test, wasn't it?
What do you mean?
For government.
What the actual reserve requirement is today? I don't remember if I put that on your test or not. All right, so let's get on to...
What does liquidate mean? Like exactly?
It's to make it like actual money, right? To make it like
turn something into M1. Turning into cash, coins, maybe checks.
credit.
We say that money or investments have different degrees of liquidity. How liquid it is means how immediate can it, how immediately can it be used. So if you've got, let's say, not you, let's say Dylan, he's got $10,000 in stock. Do you have some money in your stock trade account? $1,000. That's money, right? It's got $1,000 in stock trade. It's got trade, excuse me. Is that M1 or M2?
M1 or M2. That was it.
I consider it M2. Can he use that $1,000 to go to Chipotle? Chipotle? We call it Chipotle in my family out of fun, so it's a habit. Let's say he wants to go to Chipotle today. Can he use any of that $1,000?
No.
He can if he can get it out. How long would it take you, Dylan, to get that money out?
Wow.
A while.
Approximately 30 days.
Do you know how long?
No.
Okay, he doesn't know how long.
Long-term investment.
I know it's 30.
But it wouldn't be something that he could just go to an ATM and withdraw, right?
Right.
So it's not the most liquid. It's not the most liquid.
No.
I would.
Okay, so that's what liquidity means.
Is checks M2?
No, checks are M1.
What?
You can use checks and everything.
Cash, coins, and checks. That's chapter
Mine take forever to gather.
11?
Is there anything called M3? What does that do?
There is M3, yeah. But you don't have to know for the test.
Oh, the secret.
There is M3.
Is there a
They don't really emphasize it anymore in the test.
What? Can you give us a little hint of it?
No, because time is too precious.
Is it like where you can't withdraw something for like a certain amount of years?
Every time I answer a random question, that's an opportunity cost. All right?
Very
Price goes up the more and more time we burn. All right, let's go to question number 9. Question number 9. 79% got this right.
79?
What's the other way?
The answer is B. Good.
C plus I plus G plus I.
That's right. That's the expenditure approach to calculating GDP, right? To looking at the entire economy's goods and services. What's the definition of GDP?
Oh,
You know I know it. I mastered this by now.
I don't
I
know.
love it now.
No, you can have that.
Amir.
I'll probably get it wrong anyways.
Really?
Yeah, probably.
Well, then you go. I'll see.
That's the attitude.
Someone says
Okay.
Way to stay positive. Go ahead, Dylan.
Okay. The total market value of all the goods and services.
So close.
So,
and
Amir?
of the final goods and services.
That's right. Final.
yeah, the final market value of all goods and services.
The total market value of
Whoa!
all the final goods and services produced in a country in a year.
Here.
Ah,
Number 9. Number 10.
In a given year.
Number 10. Ready, set, go.
Buying and selling bonds.
But if you're going to calculate GDP, you can do the expenditures approach, C plus I plus G plus NX, or you can do the income approach, which is W plus I plus P plus R. The income approach, Weasel plus is red, stands for wages plus profits plus interest plus rents. All right, number 10. 60% got this right. What do you think, you two?
C.
What answer?
It's
I'm pointing to them. Yeah.
Me?
No, you two.
I'm very egotistic. We're both egotistical.
The answer is C.
Yes.
They issue new bonds. They sell bonds.
Increasing the required reserve ratio is just in case a run on the bank in which the bank will collapse.
Well, there's different reasons for having a required reserve ratio and then adjusting it. But
Primary on
number 11.
Wait, why are you gonna do so good first in the term?
This is chapter 12 and 13. A little bit of 14. So for number 11, the answer is A. Interest rates. The key word is decrease. They could change the money supply, they could change interest rates, they could influence investment, maybe even the amount of money loaned by banks, but the question is what's going to decrease? Which of the following are going to decrease? If they buy government securities, if the Fed buys bonds, it leads to a chain reaction, correct? So let's go over that chain reaction.
I owe this chain reaction. This is my bread and butter.
Now this is all what kind of policy, everybody? Over here to the right where the government's changing spending. Fiscal policy, right? Fiscal policy. Politicians, the president, Congress, changing spending. They could also be changing taxes, increasing or decreasing taxes. But this question is talking about monetary policy. Monetary policy has three tools, right? Open market operations, which is buying and selling bonds, also known as government securities. They're issued by the government. All right. Increasing or decreasing the discount rate. Discount rate is the rate that the Federal Reserve, all right, the board of directors for the Federal Reserve charges, the interest rate that they charge commercial banks that want to borrow from the Fed. It's the best rate out there. And then you have the required reserve ratio. They can change one or more of these things. So the question is, when the Reserve buys government securities, they do this, what happens? We always start with the money supply, correct? Something happens with the money supply. They buy bonds.
This is money.
Looks like this.
You can see that.
Hey.
We were the founders.
I'm the Fed.
Oh, the dogs.
Am I part of the banking system if I'm the Fed, Ben Bernanke?
you're
No.
outside.
You all are peons, even if you're Bank of America. You're a peon compared to me.
Bank of Reserve.
And if I buy bonds, I go out here to this bank and buy some of your bonds and take it off your books, like that bank over there, including him. Right, here's some money for you, here's some money from you. What did I just do to the money supply?
Increase.
Increase the money supply. Thank you very much, give me my money back. Let's just pretend it's in circulation.
You just decrease it.
All right, so we all agree you're going to increase the money supply? Where did I put my pen? There it is. All right. Now, what else would do this besides buying bonds? What else would increase the money supply? What would you do to the discount rate?
Lower it probably.
Decrease the discount rate or decrease the required reserve ratio, right? You decrease the rate that the Fed charges commercial banks that want to borrow from the Fed. It gets cheaper. They're more inclined to do that, to borrow from them, and then hopefully loan that to their customers. That increases the money supply, right? Change the required reserve ratio. Let's say it was 10%, now it's 8%. More banks are going to be loaning more money out there. That could increase the money supply. All right, so all those tools could feed here. Then what's the next step in the chain reaction? If the money supply increases, and you take a look in the actual money market, there's the money supply, there's money demand, money supply increase is a shift to the right. What happens to interest rates?
Interest rate decreases and money supply.
That's correct. Goes down here. Have a new equilibrium point. So, interest rates decrease.
Leads to an increase in investment and consumption.
No. Loans.
Well, there's a small step in between. If interest rates decrease, that means they're going to have more people taking loans. There should be more loans made available, and people should be taking more loans from the banks. Is this a guarantee, though?
No.
We've been learning the last couple of years, it's not necessarily a guarantee. Some people, this is just one reason, but some people are really mad at the banks. that they got bailed out by the government a couple of years ago, and they really haven't changed significantly in terms of the amount of loans they've made available to people. And I know bankers, they're friends, going, we're just petrified of loaning. We've gone to the other extreme. After loaning to everybody, a lot of the people really shouldn't have qualified for loans, particularly home loans. Now we're in the other extreme. The pendulum swung back, and we don't want to give loans. So there's no guarantee that this is going to happen, but you know, the theory says it's supposed to happen. And then if people take more loans to spend, then they're spending by consumers and business owners. Hello? He stepped out for a minute. This is Aaron Gideon. He should be. He didn't say. Yeah, this is the place where we share XBlock. Okay. You want me to tell him you called? Okay, and you're in 502. Okay. All right.
Can you explain one little thing for me?
And then of course this shifts AD, increases AD, and now we've got more of the good stuff, right? Output increases. We don't do much of this, but incomes increase.
Decrease in unemployment.
Right, unemployment
That's right.
decreases, all that good stuff. Now, of course, if we're in an inflationary gap and prices are too high and they want to do the reverse, then you do all the opposite stuff. You sell bonds, increase this, increase that, so that this goes down, this goes up, this goes down, down, down. And 80 shifts to the left.
Right.
Okay? But the bottom line is, at the end of this chain reaction, and if you get this as a FRQ, all right, don't use these abbreviations. Say it in longhand, all right? Say, this will increase the money supply, write those words, which should lead to, every time we use one of these arrows, it's an abbreviation for leads to or causes this, which causes that, which causes that. When you get down to the end, be careful. Stop saying causes or leads to when you get here. Some people make that mistake. On the last test that we had this semester, people were making this mistake. They were saying, yeah, and that leads to that, which leads to that, which, no, we don't have this. It's just, it leads to all kinds of good stuff, right? That. But you're going to say this longhand. You're going to say, and all of that should lead to an increase in national income, an increase in output, a decrease in unemployment, an increase in employment. Okay? Don't make that mistake of putting that arrow in between all of these, because they're all lumped together. They're all lumped. All right. So, yes.
For the when they don't do the maximum of their potential, like they don't, like it's projected that they loan out everything, but they hold back some. What is that called? There's a term for it, I remember.
What's that called? It's not loaning the maximum. There's two things that could decrease the potential increase of the money supply. That's one of them. If banks don't loan all of their excess reserves.
There's a word for it. What is it?
And then the other thing you're probably thinking of is cash leakage.
That's what it is, yep.
But that's not the banks. That's somebody else.
That
Holding on to money in the whole chain reaction.
Yeah, okay.
That's right. All right. So this piece is key. If we were going to try to calculate shorthand what the maximum possible increase in the money supply could be. Remember, there's a couple of formulas. There's 1 over R times a change in R, and there's 1 over R times a change in ER. Right? That's the maximum possible, but the maximum possible will not occur if there's cash leakage and banks don't loan all of their excess reserves. Okay? If they hold back, or if I, as one of the people that take a loan to spend it, hold back, I don't spend the entire amount, then the impact's going to be less than this.
Is there such a thing as cash surplus, or am I making that up?
You're making that up.
Oh, I thought I heard that before.
So this would be we call this a money multiplier. And over here, with fiscal policy, if there's an increase in government spending, we had a multiplier for that too, don't we? Thanks to Keynes.
Oh, Keynes.
The spending multiplier is this. 1 over 1 minus MPC.
That's the spending multiplier you said?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Could like executives who give out bonuses, could that be counted as cash?
Executives giving out bonuses.
Like people who get loans and then they'll just like.
Yeah, they're spending it. They're not using it for business activity. That's not cash leakage, that's cash hemorrhaging. Cash bleeding to death. Which is part of the problem with our country right now, but I digress. Let's go on to number 12. Actually, don't do number 12.
Don't do it?
Because what we just talked about makes me think of another question that I want to skip to, and then we can come back to 12.
Shoot.
It is...
28.
Use the chain reaction.
No. Well, yeah, go ahead and do 28, and I'll find the other one in a minute.
28?
Do 28. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know which one it is now. They got a good one after 28.
The one that like 70% got one.
Only about half of the country got 28 right.
What?
They're not taught by Gideon.
It's
The answer was D.
Hell yeah.
That one.
All right, now do 40. Number 40.
It's 40, the one where, oh, 28. Half cut, right?
28 half got it right. Wow, we're almost at 3 o'clock already.
What?
Yeah, it's
I thought we
2:47.
got a lot. I achieved much more than that last time.
Time flies by when you have a
Yeah. Number 40. Jason, you're saying D. Dylan, you're saying D. Marshonda says D. What about Delaney? Miklo says D.
SAD.
Put some numbers in there for a second. Number 40. According to Keynesian analysis,
No, like 40, I thought C for 40. Are you in 40 or?
I'm on 40. Number 40.
I put C for 40.
Oh, okay.
What's the answer?
According to Keynes, if government expenditures, spending, and taxes are increased by the same amount, let's say it's 100 billion, okay? What's the impact on the economy going to be of the spending? Is it going to be 100 billion? No. It's going to be 100 billion times this. That was supposed to be the beauty of Keynesianism, that it's going to be greater than the 100 billion. Let's say the marginal propensity to consume is 0.96. It's going to be a huge impact. You have a spending multiplier. Is there a tax multiplier? No. So if you increase spending by 100 billion and you cut taxes, or excuse me, you increase taxes by 100 billion, because there's a multiplier for spending, spending is going to out-impact the taxes. So the answer is E.
crap.
Give me a point.
The answer is E. He's also heard this question before.
Who?
You. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but there's not.
Kinda.
Yeah. It's like one
Let's say this is our curve. All right? Ceteris paribus. Nothing else changes. Increase spending by 100 billion. Or increase taxes by 100 billion. Let's just do the taxes first. If you were going to increase taxes by 100 billion, it would move to the left by 100 billion. Whatever that comes to. If you increase spending by 100 billion, it doesn't move to the right 100 billion, it moves to the right 100 billion times the spending multiplier. Which is, who knows, maybe it's $1 trillion total once you multiply, right? Because Keynes said there's a trickle down, so to speak. There's a multiplier effect. If the government comes in and increases spending by 100 billion,
Right.
those people that get the money say, thank you very much, I'm going to spend it. And then the people that get that say, thank you very much, I'm going to spend some of that.
Right.
And then so on and so on and so on. So the total ripple effect is more than 100 billion. That's what this whole formula is about. Let's estimate what the total ripple effect is going to be throughout the entire economy after everybody says, thanks, I'll spend that. Thanks, I'll spend that. Thanks, I'll spend that.
What if no one did anything?
So the government's spending is like,
Then that's called
That is bad.
crowding out, isn't it?
That's completely crowding out right there.
so the government spending is like the key word that changes the entire question.
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's a spending multiplier.
Ooh.
So you just times the 100
I
billion
like
times
that, I
that.
get it.
Yeah, so let's say the MPC is, remember what MPC means, right? The marginal propensity to consume. There is a formula by Keynes says consumption is equal to autonomous consumption plus the MPC times disposable income, right? This is the marginal propensity to consume, or in other words, the rough percentage of extra income that people can burn up that they will probably spend. I think this is a higher or low number in the US compared to other countries, let's say in Asia.
Higher.
Higher, right? In Asia, maybe, who knows, it's 0.8 or 0.9. Let's say for us, it's 0.99.
Ours is over.
Wasn't it 1.1?
It was more than one
At one time.
at one time, it isn't anymore. People actually are saving a little bit. Okay? So if it's 0.99, it becomes 1 over 1 minus 0.99, which is 1 over 0.01.
Right.
So what is that? That's 100?
Is it? No. I'm not good at math.
So it's 100 billion times 100. That's what the real impact is.
Damn.
100 billion times 100.
That's ridiculous. You can't even, I don't even know how to look
And that's why, excuse me for a second, I might actually have it here in this mess. Where's my Newsweek? There's one. Shoot. It's around here somewhere. I'll probably find it when you guys leave. The cover of a Newsweek earlier this year said, "We want you to spend." And the picture of Uncle Sam.
Really?
We want you to spend.
That's funny.
Not we want you to come into the military. We want you to improve the economy by being a part of the multiplier effect.
It's an economics inside joke. We're not happy about that.
All right, we only have time for a couple more. Now let's go all the way back to 12. By the way, that last question, that trick question-ish, it's pretty trickish. 35% got that right.
Well, let's say winner trick us.
Well, it's
It's not a
semi-trick.
trick question, it's just a little tricky. I got you back once you get it.
Thanks, man.
Probably was
Yeah.
the worst person back for that, but I lied.
I don't know why.
Why don't you?
I'm looking at the last 10, right there.
But it's not.
12, the answer is E. Pretty easy. That's chapter 16, growth. And remember, growth can be shown on a graph. It can be shown by having Laras move to the right. It can be shown having the PP curve, production possibilities frontier, moving to the right,
Can you look at
expanding outward.
Number 25 as the graph.
Sure. Go to 25. What Dylan's talking about was what I'm describing to you. Which one of these, A through E, shows true growth? Not fiscal or monetary policy that's designed to help us get through a rough patch, but to truly grow an economy. One-third of the country missed number 25. Mazen, what's the answer? 25.
25 plus 25.
Wow. I don't know. 20. No.
Yeah,
D is the right answer.
If they use Laras and Saras, they practically give you the answer, so they just label it AS. But the slope of the curve makes a big difference. If it's straight up and down, you know that's long run aggregate supply, so the answer is D.
Yes,
For 25, the answer is D.
because AS is just increasing, aggregate supply, why wouldn't it be AD increasing?
Because that's not
The
growth.
long run.
That's not growth.
Okay.
That's not improving the potential of the economy. The potential of the economy is all based under Larasz.
Okay, okay.
All right, let's do one more for today, and let's do 22. Just a taste of foreign exchange. Mexicans and Americans. 22.
I got the first half.
Mexicans.
When you look at the dollar price of another currency, do you look at the US graph or the Mexico graph?
You look at the Mexico graph. So,
So it would be increase, right?
if you're asking yourself,
So it'd be A.
what's the price of a currency? For this class, it's always relative to another currency, right? What's the price in terms of the other currency? So let's say this is the Mexican peso, and this is the US dollar, all right? Just like any other market, Marcy Chin called me, just so you know. I told her I'd tell you. She's in 502, I think. Cool.
Hey. For real.
All right, the market for the peso,
The supply increases.
just like the market for anything, you have price and quantity, but anytime we could be more specific, we want to be specific, right? Instead of just price and quantity, we might put nominal interest rate or real interest rate. Here, this is the price of the dollar, fine, in pesos. And this is just the quantity of dollars. Over here for the peso, it's the flip, right? It's the price of the peso in dollars. This is just the quantity of pesos. All right, supply, demand, And then you have to know the factors that shift these curves. Now remember, they're tied together. So this curve, I'll put a square around it, consider it part of the square family, and its relative or its spouse is over there. And this one is part of the triangle family. This is how we do things in football sometimes. We're doing assignments, we're saying like offense and defense, whose job it is to block that guy. We put the same symbol around the players, so that you know.
Oh,
So let's say we're going to run pass protection against this even front. I'm going to say center. It's your job to block that guy. That's what you do. They match together. Now the way that I like to figure out these questions is by saying, which way is money flowing? Even though there's no real bank in the middle of the ocean, it kind of helps you sometimes to visualize by detaching, where the transaction takes place. And so as soon as you know which way money is flowing, you know that country is going to increase the supply of currency in this fictional place. Okay, the reality is somebody goes to a bank in one of these countries, it's not in the middle of the ocean, or they go to the airport, right, and they change out currency. But let's say something happens that causes Mexicans to want to put their money in the United States. That means they're going to increase the supply of pesos to this fictional bank, all right, to get dollars. We don't take pesos in the United States. We take dollars, right? So they got to trade it out. They have to supply their pesos and demand dollars. So if money's coming this way, because maybe they want to buy something American,
Right.
that's going to increase the demand for the dollar, which means the price or the value is going to go up. And over here,
Because they want to buy more.
that's right, they want to buy American stuff. Over here, the price or the value of the peso is going to decrease.
Because they're buying Americans.
Right, now there's all kinds of factors that you need to know that are in your book, right, that would say what dictates which way money flows, like a change in real interest rates from country to country, difference in inflation, maybe wealth. Oops, wealth. Let's say Americans become wealthier than Mexicans, all right? Like maybe incomes in both countries go up, but the incomes in the United States go up faster. They're going to have more money to spend, money's going to flow that way, so supply curve is going to shift to the right, the demand curve for the peso is going to shift to the right. All right, let's say, inflation. Let's say prices are going up faster in the United States. All right, it's more expensive to buy stuff in the U.S. compared to Mexico. The money's going to flow to Mexico.
Yes.
Supply here shifts to the right, demand over there shifts to the right.
Okay, I got that.
Right? Real interest rates, we already talked about this. Money's going to flow where money can grow.
Exactly.
So if real interest rates are going up faster in Mexico, money's going to flow to Mexico.
It's gonna go there. It's gonna go there.
Little outflow right there.
Capital outflow.
Yeah, you would call that capital outflow. Yes.
22 is B, right?
Oh, yeah, it does increase.
22 is B.
Literally changed.
And that was a 50%er. All right, that's all the time we have for today.
One second, I'm writing it down.
Mr. Gideon, always a pleasure.
Have you
Thanks.
heard of the
Same here.
Vietnamese dollar?
Of whose?